A One Direction reunion. Something fans have waited for a long time. The last years were the longest 18 months in history, and many people want nothing more than the five guys back on stage. But in this video I'm gonna try to explain why this has not only good sides but could potentially be very dangerous for their careers. Alright, I think every 1D fan came to a moment where they wished that they could see the band one last time live again. And then everyone thought it would be so good to see them back together as a band. But what if a complete reunion is, besides being extremely unlikely at the moment, actually not that good for their careers? Alright, let me explain that. I mean, right now, all of them went solo, wrote their own songs and released their own records, and all try to build up their own brand. They all have tried to distance themselves from the boyband image, and while this does not mean that they don't talk about 1D or don't sing their songs anymore, but you can tell by the way that they try to represent themselves in the public that they all went different ways. For example, if you watch my video about them singing their own songs after the break, you can definitely see how different their styles are. Harry, for example, is no true rock star, with a traditional band and this kind of pop rock sound. Louis is the closest to Harry with a more indie and festival themed sound. Niall, however, has a more poppy sound with some folk and country parts, and Liam went a bit more into hip hop and radio pop. But Zayn has the biggest difference from all the others. He went straight up into R&B. But for a reunion, this means you just have two options. First, they just make some tours and then continue their solo careers. I think this is the most realistic and least hurtful one, but even a tour has major downsides for their long-term careers. All of the boys spend much time and work building up their own name. If you just took a look at some lyrics from the songs like Strip That Down from Liam, where he said, "You know I used to be in 1D, now I'm free, people want me for one thing, that's not me, I'm not changing the way that I used to be."
Well, you know I used to be in 1D, now I'm free, people want me for one thing, that's not me, I'm not changing the way that I used to be.
It gets quite clear that they all try to distance themselves from the boyband image. This is a very important thing to do to get taken seriously as a solo artist. And now just imagine how hard it would be for them to do this a second time if they get back together after the tour. I mean, if they would go on tour, it would give them some momentum. Definitely more streams and more fame for a moment, but it would also increase the pressure on them to be like the guys in 1D again, because that will bring them this success in the moment. But that's what's so dangerous for their careers. Let's take a look at Zayn and Harry. They're clearly the most successful of the band, but they're also the ones who distance themselves from most from 1D. Zayn developed a completely different music style and disappeared completely from the media, and Harry not only made a rock album as a debut record, but also became famous for his very unique style. And while they point to 1D here and there, they have managed to be completely independent of the success of 1D, while other guys like Louis and Liam are still mainly the guys from 1D. If we take a look at the press articles, we can see that they're still the One Direction members. It's quite sad, but it is the truth. This proves the point that you need to be independent to be successful as a solo artist. Especially for Louis, who is currently building up his own name with his second solo album, this step backwards would be quite dangerous. And yes, you could argue that this would give them a second boost for their solo careers, but at what cost? Them being the boyband guys again? This leads us to the second option, fully getting back together. The second option would be a whole reunion. It's maybe unlikely, but let's just imagine what would happen then. For one, it would be, I guess, quite inauthentic for them to get back to their boyband image, as they all have developed different styles and identities over the years, and it would be challenging to combine all of the individual styles into a cohesive sound. And if they fail to do so, they may not be perceived as authentic by the fans. Additionally, seeing the grown men back on stage together, playing the boyband thing, may be odd for some fans. And their fanbase has aged and is no more grown up too, meaning that a classic boyband thing may not meet up their expectations. So what about a more serious tone? The problem here is that the other half of the fans may still expect the old 1D, because nostalgia is a big part of their appeal, and developing into a more serious band may not do justice to their nostalgic charm. The following conflict in the fanbase about whether 1D is better now or then, or whether the new style is good, would also lead into further stress and toxic reactions in the fandom. Also, so many would be disappointed because of the lack of solo music, which would lead into further controversy. I think it's so awesome to imagine how the five guys would be on stage again, but I think it just wouldn't be the same. And that would be reflected in the popularity too. There would be loud parts of the fandom demanding solo music again. I mean, if we take a look at how much 1D and Harry's albums are streamed, it gets quite clear that Harry's actually no more successful than 1D ever was. His most streamed album Fire 9 is nearly 2 times more streamed than 1D's Made in the AM. So there would not only be happy fans, but many would also be angry. And especially Harry, who's currently one of the biggest stars of the time, would suffer because he would only be part of a band again. And the way back solo would be even harder, at least in the near future, because none of them would pursue any more solo projects during this time. So while the One Direction reunion may be a dream come true for some fans, it's important to consider the potential risks and drawbacks that comes with such a decision. The band members have all worked hard to establish themselves as successful solo artists with their own unique style and identities, and going back to their boyband image could be seen as inauthentic and may harm their careers in the long run. But the decision to reunite is up to the band members themselves, and it is important for them to carefully consider their own goals and priorities. They all have shown immense talent and potential as solo artists, and it would be a shame for them to lose all of their individually and potential success by going back to their boyband image. This does not mean that I think some concerts together would be bad, and I don't hope that they'll happen. But in the end, fans should support the individual careers of each member while continuing to appreciate the legacy of One Direction. While the reunion may be exciting in the short term, it is important to think about the long-term implications and potential harm it could bring to the individual members themselves and their careers. One Direction will always hold a special place in the heart of all of us, and the legacy should be respected and honored with whatever path the members choose to take. The main thing should be that they are happy.